Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of The Intern. My name is Jordan Faley. I'm currently an upcoming senior in college, and on The Intern, we interview some professionals in different fields to kind of peel back the mask and see what life as a professional is really like. So, today we have a very special guest joining us. Her name is Sana, and I'll leave it to her to introduce herself to everyone.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you bringing me on. Hi, everyone. My name is Sana Asher. I work at Integrity along with Keith Sims, and I head the SAP practice. Spent about 3 decades in the SAP ecosystem. Over to you.
That's great. So I'm sure throughout those decades, you have seen a lot of advice given to young professionals and, professionals more deep into their career alike. And so I'm wondering, throughout all those different kinds of tips that you've heard said to these professionals, what are some that you think young professionals should really avoid and kind of not listen to when they hear them out in the corporate world?
Great question, Jordan. So I think the first thing young professionals, should do is just be open to listening, right? It's not necessarily, hey, take everyone's advice. That's not what I'm saying. Just be open to listening to to different people, but at the end, do what is right by you. And what I mean by that is everyone can give you all sorts of things to do, right? Hey, behave a certain way, do a certain thing. But if that is not your characteristics, that's not your DNA, that is not who you are, then you're going to keep projecting it, right? So the number one advice I would give to young professionals is be open to listening. So keep listening all the time, but absorb that and use that listening or that advice in your own way, right? You don't need to necessarily change for anybody or kind of do something different out of the box, right? So that's one thing I definitely would encourage them to do. The thing I would not want them to do is get fixated on certain ways of behaviors, right? A company says you only have to behave a certain way. Yes, I understand. Obviously, we all work for a corporation, so you have to adhere to being professional. But at the same time, don't let your spark leave you. Don't let your spontaneity leave you. Don't leave common sense, by the wayside, right? Always make sure you are common sense always comes first. A lot of the young folks, who I work with, are very, very intelligent, but when they come to the common sense part of things, it's like, really, you don't even know that. So, you know, I definitely think that's a skill.
Okay. That makes sense. That seems to really be a recurring theme throughout these interviews that I've had so far. It's kind of balancing autonomy and self discipline and getting tasks done on your own, but also making sure that you keep up with what your leadership is telling you and tasking you with. And it seems like that's something really important for young professionals to focus on. And that kind of leads into the second question that we have here today, which is what is an important skill that interns and young professionals alike need to kind of hone and practice and ensure that they have in order to be irreplaceable to somebody in a leadership position that has more experience and expertise in their designated fields.
Sure. So I think one of the most irreplaceable skills is the ability to follow through with what you say you are going to do. So I think
Hmm.
number one, like I said, let common sense be your guiding factor, right? Like, use common sense in all situations, and I can give you a few examples of that. But also, be who you are and do what you say. Who you are, right? So definitely be the person you are, that you're saying you are. You're listening in, you're leaning in, but also, implement the action. A lot of people use words as a lip service, and when it actually comes to action, they're not around. So the people who are always around, who can be counted on, who can be like, yep, he's always going to be there, I can trust this person, or she's always going to be there, they'll step up, are the ones exactly say what they mean and mean what they say, right? So I think that's a very, very important skill.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's like when you're talking to leadership and you're kind of defining like the points and the things that you need to get done, you have to follow through with those points. Is that kind of what you're?
Yes. Yes, follow
Okay.
through those points, and follow through if you've made a commitment, right? So if you're in a leadership meeting, or if your leadership is asking you to just say, create an Excel file. I'm just making this up, right?
Yeah.
Do it, right? Don't wait for someone to remind you. Like, just get it done, right? You may not know the answers, you may not know how to make it happen. So ask the question, hey, I don't know the answer to this, or am I understanding your ask correctly? Ask the question. I don't think people have a problem guiding, the professionals, right? But a lot
Hmm.
of people just become order takers. They just take the order, and they're then waiting for the next order. No, I mean, if you want to get somewhere in life, if you want to be irreplaceable, then you've got to also show that you are that person. People are not going to just know by looking at you. Your actions are going to talk a lot louder than your words.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting. And I noticed that you have written a book. You're an
Yes.
author of the SAP playbook, and I'd love to hear more about that. Like, how does that sort of a thing come about? How did you create that book? What was the process like? I think it'd be very insightful to us young professionals how that kind of a thing comes about.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, Jordan, I've spent about 3 decades in the SAP ecosystem, right? And one of the things that I saw continuously was there was so much noise. There was so much noise around SAP implementations or ERP transformations taking the longest time and, not going well. But no one talked about the human side of these transformations, right? At the end of the day, we're all human. A CEO, a CFO, a COO, we're all, directors, VPs, we're all humans. So no one talked about what happens when a transformation goes well to that human, whoever you are, a CEO, CIO, COO, whatever, or what happens when it doesn't go well. It's both sides of the coin, right? So I took my experience of the last 3 decades and I kind of put that together in a book, in a playbook, where I really think people can read it. They can use that advice because I've actually given very practical tips to say, if you're in the middle of a transformation, this is what you do. Or if you are starting a transformation, this is kind of what you should look for. So that is the reason I kind of put that book together, because everyone talks about the good things. No one talks about the things that what happens when things go wrong, or what happens when things are not good. What happens then? Where do you turn? So
Hmm.
this book kind of covers the good and the bad, but it also covers an entire human angle, which is any transformation that you start. And it's also as simple as, leaving college and starting a job, right? That's also a transformation, because you are now transitioning from being a student to a professional, right? That's a transformation.
Hmm.
It changes people. It changes us as human beings, right?
Yeah.
And that's the piece I've captured in that book. And it took me about a year and a half to write the book, and I just think I want it to be with people where they can get that aha moment and say, oh my God, finally someone's telling me what I could do. So that's how the book came about.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how it actually aligns very well with the concept of the intern podcast, trying to cut through the noise, simplify things for the young professionals where it might be a little bit more complicated. And you were mentioning somewhat of the unglamorous reality and showing the ugly side of things. So to kind of keep with that line of discussion, I'd love to ask, what are kind of some of the unglamorous realities of your day-to-day being such a seasoned professional in the SAP space? I know when I got started with my internship, I didn't even know what SAP was, and then I
I
realized it was like the
know.
backbone of everything that we know. So I'm
Right.
very curious to hear what you think about that.
Sure, absolutely. So some of the unglamorous things, and I think it kind of comes with, with experience and the time you've spent. I probably get over 500 DMs a day, believe it or not, on LinkedIn,
Wow.
and I take the time to respond to every single one of them. I So that's the unglamorous side. I'm not using an AI agent. I'm not using an intern to respond
Yeah.
to that. So that's the unglamorous side. The other thing is, there are I see so many individuals, so many of my colleagues, so many industry experts. who mean well, who talk about a lot of things that are happening in the SAP ecosystem, but everyone's afraid to kind of speak the truth. They're afraid to cross the line. They're afraid to call a spade a spade. And when I do, I either get met with a lot of nods or like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Like, it's that depending on the room. So I'm at a point, Jordan, where it doesn't matter for me. The client needs to know what they're getting into, and that's how you separate the noise and the real thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, some of those unglamorous things that you talk about.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. So, I mean, it's all about what you were mentioning earlier and kind of standing true to your morals and not just
Yes.
sitting there complacent and letting things by that might just be normal in your industry or the corporate world. And you kind of step up and cut those things off.
Absolutely, absolutely, and as a woman, right? And it's definitely different for a man and a woman. And I know this is not a Me Too conversation. This is not, I'm
Hmm.
trying to say, or a gender bias conversation. But even in IT, even within SAP, there are still less women, and there are less women who even speak up. So I think. For the young professionals who are looking to come into the industry, whether if you're a female, you definitely want to be stronger, bolder, speak up, right?
Hmm.
Speak your truth. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to do what's right by you and you have to be authentic.
Yeah, 100%. And that's truly great advice for men, women, young professionals alike. So, with that said, I'm not sure, is there any final tips or any message you want to leave off for the younger generation before we conclude the interview?
The only thing I would say is don't procrastinate. The three words I live by is just do it. So just do it. Don't wait for things to happen. Just make them happen.
Alrighty, that's wonderful. Well, you heard it here first. Totally not reused from any other company at all. And thank you very much for coming on and taking the time to interview. And we really appreciate the insight that you shared with us.
My pleasure, Jordan. Thank you.